building trust, reaching out, listening, making sure you're not only understood, but you also understand the others, is of tremendous importance. And that has been at the heart also of the choice we have made, the push and the proactive approach we have taken on loss and damage. And I'm sure that you've gotten a message also from many other people that we did not want to treat this just as one of the negotiation chips, but as a trust builder, as a sign of commitment from the European at large, which has been instrumental. Member states have been instrumental in filling the fund, but also in creating the setup and making sure we got this out of the way. And frankly speaking, I think that is one of the reasons why we are further ahead, why we do have a bit of wind in our sails, that many actually did not expect some 6, 7, 8 weeks ago.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, hand raised in the middle, and then I will go here to the aisle for a second question.
Thank you, John Ainger, Bloomberg News. After your bilateral with the COP28 President, Commissioner Hoekstra, how optimistic are you that there's going to be language on phasing out fossil fuels in the final agreement at COP28? And secondly, I was wondering if we could get your reaction to Armenia dropping their bid to host COP29, potentially freeing the way for Azerbaijan to do so. Is that something the EU would support? Thanks.
Hi, Ellie Kinney from the Conflict and Environment Observatory. Many civil society organisations are pleased to finally see within the European Parliament's COP28 resolution to see it address the importance of both transparent reporting of military and conflict emissions, as well as the need for the defence sector overall to reduce its emissions in order to achieve the continent's net zero ambition. How do you see the European Union carrying this issue forward within the UNFCCC? Thank you.
Maybe in the division of labour, I'll do the first two, and Peter, if I may ask you to do the last one. Just on fossil fuels, on the optimism, but also, what is I think at the core of what we have to do here, simply because scientists tell us that if you want to do something that is at the very heart, you cannot walk around phasing out fossil fuels. It's as simple as that. It is not my desire. It is not a European desire. It is a reality that we should acknowledge and we should address. And therefore, I told you earlier that I want COP28 to mark the beginning of the end of fossil fuels. That is something simply what we need to do. Having said that, the global stocktake is about much more than just this specific wording. It is about how we ensure that the phase-out happens. It is about creating the right conditions for the transition, identifying means to deliver, designing the process, and also taking into account the concerns of some who might be already in quite a difficult position. But it's also about, let's be frank about that, some would argue the absurdity of fossil fuel subsidies, which are holding us back. So we do have to address this. The COP president has made explicit a number of times that it is also his ambition to have this in the text. I think that is for all the right reasons. And what we now have to do is make sure that we take the whole family along, and we invite people to go further than where we are today. Again, we do that for future generations, not just because it is people negotiating here. Then maybe on COP29, a lot of information has been in the news recently, as you know, and therefore I'm going to be a bit moderate. It is for the regional groups, not for the European Union, to decide on the rotating presidency. Here it is, of course, about the Eastern European group. On a general note, I find it positive that there is a joint statement between two countries with a very tense relation, to say the least, and with a lot of things going on recently. So at the very least, as a confidence-building measure, I think this is very good news. We think as European Union, we've engaged a lot with these countries in the recent past. There is an historic chance to bring peace closer than it is today. But that is all I want to say about it at this stage of the conversation.
Yeah, on the defense sector, in fact, important and tricky issue. Maybe I will start with an experience that we had in the Environment Committee of the European Parliament some weeks ago. We had a meeting with the Environment Committee from the Rada from Ukraine. And they explained us in very strong and explicit words how the war, the Russian aggression, destroys also the environment and what are the consequences also for the climate of this war. So that needs to be looked at. It's also in our resolution. In the military sector, I see more and more recognition that we have a huge problem with climate change. Also, security is in danger when we don't control, we don't mitigate climate change. And that's why they are reaching out and looking at what they can contribute. We were always a bit hesitant in our legislation to include military. It is, of course, sensible. For example, I see the rapporteur, Jan Huitema, on CO2 cars. Military cars are not yet covered by CO2 cars, but the military itself, they understand that they also need to look at the climate effect of what they are doing.
Thank you very much. I have a question here in the front row, and then in, I think it's the fifth row.
Good afternoon. What is the European definition of unabated?
Thank you. European definition of unabated for anybody that didn't catch it, and then in the white shirt on the aisle. Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much. Brad Plumer with the New York Times. Could you just outline what the one or two hardest issues over this coming week to reach agreement are? Like, what do you see as the biggest sticking points towards reaching a final agreement?
Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, your question immediately links in with the previous one. So let me actually combine them. The reality is, and reality we need to face and actually embrace, is that we have to phase out fossil fuels. Period. That we do our utmost, that we come up with very ambitious language at this COP. Of course, well knowing that you cannot stop this from one day to the next, and that yes, there is a distinction to be made between sectors, and some sectors are certainly today, hard to abate. And as I said at the previous press conference, therefore it is also crystal clear that CCS is part of the solution space, but make no mistake, we cannot CCS ourselves out of the problem. It simply doesn't exist. We need to drive down emissions, we need to drive down fossil fuels, and yes, then but a minor part of the solution space is being linked to this. What is the hardest issue? Well, this is clearly high on the list. I'm positive about what we did manage to do on loss and damage. Again, this enables for much better conversations. I am optimistic about where we stand in terms of tripling renewables. And I'm optimistic about the atmospherics and the sentiments I've gotten so far with constructive conversations, substantial conversations that of course we need to have more of them. We need courage. We need creativity in the days to come. But in the end, this is, I think, a pivotal issue to move ahead with.
Okay, I think we've probably got time for a couple more questions. Yeah, here in the second row.
Philip Kirkegaard, Danish Media Klima Monitor. So Sultan Al-Jaber, at the previous presentation, he used the word face down. And Dan Jørgensen from my country, who was also in the panel, he used the word face out, just like you do. But could the EU live with a face down in this meeting, in the text?
Look, again, and I'm referring to this not only to you, but I'm referring to this with all the conversations I'm having. And I'm trying to make a distinction between many of the negotiations I've been part of in national politics and in the international arena. It is very often, two countries or a group of countries negotiating, and, you're looking for the middle ground. Yes, to some extent that is true here as well, but there is a significant difference. We cannot negotiate with the scientific reality outside. And therefore, it is the case that scientists are telling us that, the simple reality we're facing is that if we want to make sure we keep 1.5 in reach, we simply need to do much more. And if we commit ourselves to doing much more, we have to go to the heart of the matter. And we have to phase out fossil fuels. Again, in the context that I was just laying out. So that is not something you can do from one day to the next. And yes, part, but only a minor part of the solution space will be CCS. But the hard and difficult work needs to be done, needs to be acknowledged here, and that is about phasing out.
If I may just add and quote again the European Parliament's resolution, because that is why we are here and the Commission is under pressure also. A tangible phase-out of fossil fuels as soon as possible. We don't speak about unabated here, including by halting all investments in fossil fuel extraction. And we have already discussed this in our delegation. There is not even a definition of unabated. So some strange idea are flooding around, and this will not bring us to the 1.5 degrees target.
Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of our 30 minutes, and there's no more hands raised, so obviously everybody is satisfied. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Leader.
Thank you very much.
Next one's at 4 o'clock. Might go and take 10 minutes outside. No, he got the name wrong. I think he called you and then he said camera 2. So I think he just... Yeah, it's alright. I think he just went like that. That's because you're just... That's because you are tight. I've seen you in the bar. You never managed to buy one at the bar. Yeah, you've got very short arms and very deep ones. Very short arms. John, talk to me. All right. I mean, I don't know the shape.